Trigger warning. This podcast contains discussions about abuse, domestic violence, and intimate partner violence. Listener discretion is advised. What you are about to hear is a true story. My story. This podcast is about me, my abusive marriage, my fight for my life, and eventual daring escape from my ex-husband and his enabling family. My name is Bebe, and I am the authenticity warrior. My discernment about what I am facing has made me a target, but I must nonetheless speak up. Hello, everybody. Bebe here, the authenticity warrior.
Hi, everyone. Toro here as well.
Yeah, we're back so soon. Honestly, I feel like we're kind of like tapering out, like towards just like a more calmer vibe from the last couple of episodes.
Yeah. Because I think especially the ones before the last one, we were discussing like very intensely some intense things. So I guess it's easier to be more lighthearted with some of the subjects that we're going into now.
I guess in my head, the picture is just of us climbing up a hill. It feels like we've climbed up and we're now like in the descent. Just,
right.
You know, that's what it feels like. But yeah, as usual, I think it's good for us to recap the last episode. Yeah. So we discussed in the last episode, Paulinus's response to the email that I had sent on November 21st, 2020. And I'm just going to, again, read that email out so that people can hear, people can know, you know, if this is anyone's first time listening to Authenticity Warrior, they can at least get the general gist. This is the email that I had sent out after I fled the country with my children. And as soon as I landed in Canada, I sent this email out on the 21st of November just to let the people know that, look, I'm done. This man is chaotic, he's abusive, and enough is enough. To my ex, today, I choose to dismantle a shame that is not and was never mine to carry by shattering my silence on the dynamic of our relationship. I have been severely mishandled, mistreated, devalued, and taken for granted over the entire course of our relationship and marriage. For almost 10 years, you have been a toxic and abusive partner in many horrifying ways. 1. Physical assault. 2. Sexual harassment, coercion, and continuous threats to pursue other sexual partners, and including your continued weaponization of infidelity. 3. Extended violent outbursts of extreme and scary rage and anger. 4. Relentless emotional manipulation and verbal abuse. 5. Bullying and intimidation as tactics of control. 6. Reckless and dangerous behavior as a means of punishment. For example, dangerous driving with the children and myself while in a rage. 7. Financial neglect. On several occasions, not even the presence of the children nor any of my visible pregnancies could deter your blind rage. And there was no effort on your part to model appropriate behavior, thereby terrifying and distressing the boys. At your hands, the boys and I have been in distinct life-threatening incidents, and your continued unchecked behavior has worn me out. In tolerating and accommodating all this, I became a person I no longer recognized. I will no longer allow myself and my children to be subject to a toxic and unhealthy environment and exposed to barbarous behavior. I am separating myself from you and this marriage. There is absolutely no room for reconciliation on this. I am done. So, in the last episode, we just kind of delved into his response.
He responded with an email of his own. And so we kind of just combed through and I guess responded accordingly to.
Yes. And I just want to even say that the only reason why we did that is because I feel like some of you might be like, okay, we want to hear from him. Like, because I never responded to the email. I've not said a word to this guy since I left. I've had no reason to speak to him. I didn't care to respond, so I didn't. And I don't care about anything he put there in that email. But again, because he gave us the gift of actually putting his own thoughts into words. So it turned out to now be important for us here now as we're doing Authenticity Warrior, because now we get to, bring to you guys the things this guy said with his own mouth, in his own words.
And more importantly, you're able to give your perspective on it.
Yeah, definitely.
As opposed to whatever narrative he might decide to run with. Or he has decided to run with.
Mm-hmm. And I just love that I have the opportunity to be like, no, that's a lie. That's bullshit. Mm-hmm. And I only need to do that once. And I've done it now. So that's what the last episode was about. So, Tara, what was your impression, again, about how we kind of navigated just the bile, the vitriol from this guy in the last episode?
Like you said, you didn't even read it when it first came in, nor did you bother to respond to it, which I think was a good decision. Just given the space that you were in and stuff, this email was incendiary. It was kind of salacious, inflammatory. And like I said, it was just a full deployment of the Darvo tactic, which was, to deny the behavior that was called out, to then attack your credibility and then reverse the order of who the victim and the offender was in this whole dynamic and in this whole scenario. So like you said, there's a necessity to it for this project, for this podcast, but it was still labor to have to comb through his stuff. Like I said, it was icky. It leaves you with just this ick feeling. And I guess I'll just close out with two things. If it was my choice, silence is the best answer for a fool. And the other thing, which is kind of still along the same lines, which I guess is a nugget for him or anyone who behaves like that or responds like that instead of being accountable, is better to be silent and to be thought wise than to open your mouth and confirm to the world that, foolishness abounds between your ears. That's my take on it.
I'm so glad about what you've just said right now, because when I spoke to mommy and daddy, that's basically just what they said, that, look, they never had any doubt about what I said about my email, my credibility. My goodness, that's the one thing that I was just living my life, but I didn't even know how much credibility I had with people. So all the people that this guy had sent this email out to, they didn't believe it because they know me. And they were just like, no, it's not possible. And these guys went over time, not just himself, but his family, reaching out to my parents' circle, calling them, trying to badmouth me, trying to smear me. And it actually became a thing where they were the ones like, hey, no, you can't be talking about this girl because I actually know her personally. And so they were embarrassed, that people just didn't believe them. So even me too, I was even kind of shocked, because with the way this guy had come out with his vitriol, with his rubbish, sometimes it can make you wonder that, will people actually believe him over me? And I'm so glad that for the people that matter to me, at least, not one of them believed the rubbish this guy put in his email. And that to me was the icing on the cake. And, what he tried to do actually backfired, because what mommy and daddy said was he actually confirmed the validity of what I was saying, that it is an abusive person that can respond like this. Not someone who's innocent. Not someone who's not guilty, not someone that maybe they're just trying to frame. No. And it's actually a guilty person that will respond in this manner. And so thank you for bringing that up. I think for me, because I've spent time listening again to the episode, and it's pretty interesting, the one thing that I feel like I want to readdress here before we get into this new topic, which is, guys, if you remember in his email, he had spent a lot of time. We even summarized it, but he had spent paragraphs and paragraphs attacking my looks, calling me manly, saying I was ugly, saying I was not attractive because I'd cut my hair and all of that. Then he also dedicated a portion, again, speaking about how, according to him, he had opened yet another business for me to be selling black soap with his sister. And that is because I had body odor issues that he did that, and that he was disappointed that I did not join in the business or whatever. And I feel the need to readdress this because I know I addressed it already, but I'm just like, you know what? It was just very clear that not only is this guy just like, he lives in the gutter clearly, with the lies, but because, abusers, they always know their victim. They study you perfectly. And, you, when you're open, you believe you're in a relationship, you're sharing all sorts of information. You're sharing your vulnerabilities. You believe you're with someone that you love and that you trust. So for me, when I read that, I kind of just chuckled a little bit because I knew exactly what this guy was doing and where this guy was trying to go with this. You know how in Nigeria, like things like that, you say that about someone, it can kind of put a dark cloud over you. It can make you feel like a deep sense of shame. It can make you feel very insecure as to like, what do people think about you and all of that. So just to even backtrace a little bit. So this is very early on when we were dating. This is like 2012-ish. When you're just sharing with someone that you love and all of that. So I just shared some of my deepest, embarrassing things that happened to me. I'd shared about how I used to wet the bed growing up. I was one of those people that I didn't stop for a very long time. This was like maybe until like JS3, maybe even SS1 or something, sharing things like that. I'd also shared that when I hit puberty, again, I was very athletic. I have a very high metabolism. So I just shared that, when I now hit puberty, your body chemistry, things like that. I'd noticed that I could get funky. That kind of, when some people like have that, like, is it that skunk?
Normal bodily functions like sweating and sebum.
I used to even sweat a lot. So my body just kind of went haywire, especially when I had hit puberty like that. So I could sweat. I was also like an athlete back then. So I could have that like very strong smell about me, right? And so it's something that I became very self-conscious about, and I would work overtime, but there's only so much anybody could do. But Tara, would you believe that even with all of these markers, how brutal secondary school can be, I still won freshest girl. How when they're giving awards, all these socials nights and everything, I still won freshest girl. And that's just because like I was very self-conscious about it. So I used to be extra in my care, in the care of my body and stuff like that. So I just shared with him that like, I do know that I can have a very, strong sense. My body chemistry can give up some vibes. And, if you don't bath for like 2-3 days or whatever, like, things can get wild. So I had shared this with him back then. And, I'd also even mentioned how over the years, I just discovered different things that worked for me, worked for my body. I started to use more natural things like black soap, shea butter. Like I wouldn't use anything that is perfumey, because perfumey things I found my body just didn't take to it. The cleaner, the more... Is it vegan now? I should even say, but the more closer
less
to
chemicals
nature,
and
exactly. The more closer to nature, less chemicals. I noticed that it worked for my body. I could last like a whole day, even and a half into the following day, and I'll still smell great and all of that. I'd even began sugaring, reduce body hair as much as possible. These are things that this guy had known about me over the years. That I was always tweaking and figuring out how I can just make sure that I keep myself smelling fresh and smelling great, given the fact that I know that my body chemistry can be conk like that. So for him to now bring this out in the email, trying to shame me as if there's honestly no one. If people ever discover who I am, I'll be very shocked, honestly, if people can come out and be like, it's true. She had a BO or anything like that. It's just the kind of thing where when you live with somebody, of course, like I'm not like, you're going to catch me maybe when I've not had a shower yet, or you're going to catch me after like, a very long ass day or whatever. And, you now want to start getting intimate. So of course there will be, but that's the whole point of marriage. Like you see me, I see you, I accept you, you accept me. And this guy led me to believe that was the case, Toro. sometimes when especially when you be clamoring for sex and all that, I'll be like, look, I just need to have a shower. Like, I don't feel up to par. And he will insist that no, that's that he likes it.
Oh, please. Like, and that's exactly why, like, one shouldn't even bother, like, all this explanation you're doing. This is an individual who weaponizes intimacy. It's an intimacy wound, so to speak. He's inflicting an intimacy wound because, like you said, if I cannot be completely relaxed around my husband that I'm living with, then what are we doing here? Is it the 50s where, I have to go to bed with makeup, wash it off while you're sleeping, and then quickly wake up before you do and quickly put my face back on so that you won't see, you know what I mean? Like, so it's manipulative. That whole, I'm going to make you let your guard down and feel safe, but then I'm going to keep whatever closeness or whatever, the reward is the intimacy of letting me get this close beyond so-called walls and boundaries. Then I'm going to use that to hurt you later. Like, it's like dropping someone's nudes or revenge porn. It's like, it's just a weaponization of intimacy because now you're hurt that I'm not behaving and under your control the way you want me to be. I'm so glad that you've explained it like this because, again, this is just a recurring theme of this guy, just in his efforts to try to destroy me, to try to just, bring me down or smear me or hurt me. He doesn't even like do a 360 and look at all the people he's hurting. This thing that I'm mentioning, this black soap business that his sister started and was working on. Guys, you will not believe when they say you're pointing fingers and then 3 are pointing right back at you. This whole allegation of her body odor, blah, 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 blah. His sister actually struggles. I'm sorry to say. And so because I had kind of found what worked for me and how I had navigated and, found a way to last and, smell fresh for, longer during the day. I just found all these different things that worked for me over the years. So when I encountered his sister. And that's why I'm actually trying to even spend a lot of time talking about this because I know that there are a lot of people that struggle with this thing. And so when I encounter people, I try and let them know that, look, like I can smell you a little bit, but like I understand because this used to be me. And so this is kind of, what worked for me. Try this, try that, try this, try that. So I had been doing that with his sister. That is even part of the reason why she too now decided to get into the business. But they never spoke to me about it. Neither himself nor his sister spoke to me and said, hey, come and be a part of this thing. It was just the two of them that were working on it. So I even used to support the girl's business. I would buy the black soap from her. There was a particular black soap that I liked that I know worked really well for me. But just to support her, I used to buy her own, and that one, I would buy it and use it with our children. So, but my point is, this guy, just in an effort to just, hey, she had this issue, she had that issue, he's forgetting that his sister is right there. And this is someone that was seriously struggling with that issue. And I'm sorry to say this, I've been trying to be very careful in how I am saying my story but my story is my own and I have it right. These are things that I experienced, these are things that I saw. So I don't want to alienate people, make people feel as if, oh, maybe why did she have to talk about that other person's story? But I have to. I'm sorry, guys. Even his dad had the problem. And so, again, my point is, you are here gathering stones to be trying to toss at someone. And you forget that you live in a freaking glass house yourself. And which is why, his dad would be very meticulous about you bath multiple times a day. Like, when you meet his dad, he has poured perfume on his body, right? I guess everybody is just figuring out the one that works for them. But my point is, it was just so ridiculous that he found a way to put in that zinger, knowing fully well that this was an intimate thing that only he and I knew about. And he now brought it out there and weaponized it, did it in such a disgusting way. And of course, now it feels like I have to start defending my honor now that, hey, Joe, please, oh, that's not how it was. But I'm glad that you said that. Honestly, this shalaye, this explanation is actually not necessary. The people that know me know. So, it is what it is, but I'm glad that I got the opportunity to kind of delve into it deeper here. So now we'll move on to the actual point of this episode. So last week was mostly focused on him, Paulinus himself, but his family, different members of his family have also played roles in this whole relationship and the ending of it. So what would you say like is the essence of this episode or the reason, the ethos for it? Like, what's your motivation for this episode, given that we're going to be talking about his other family members' conduct throughout this whole thing?
Like I was trying to say earlier, it feels like there's a balancing game between what I feel like I do want to talk about, whether it exposes other people or not. Do you understand what I mean? Because unfortunately, what played a part in my being trapped in this relationship with this guy was his family. And if they could have even conducted themselves even halfway better than they actually did, I may not have felt the need to even speak about them and their problematic behavior and problematic ways, because maybe at the end of the day, that Paulinus, he's the X factor here. Do you get what I mean? But with the way they've been antagonizing me, with the way they've been trying to destroy me. Guys, I told you, his mother submitted all her certifications, her nursing qualifications, because herself and Paulinus are trying to share custody of my children when I'm not dead, when I'm not an invalid, when I'm very much the mother of my children. I've been their primary caregiver since birth, but they're trying to wrestle them out of my hands when I've not handed over my rights.
Nor withheld them from them.
Yeah.
Like, what you did was have the effrontery to leave an abusive marriage. So just before we even delve into this too, because I know you've mentioned it before, that part of the things that kept you there was his family and how you thought they were. I guess what I'm trying to drive at now is that since you've left him, had some distance from his family, is there clarity now that gives you a different perspective on what you were perceiving then? So then perhaps you were thinking, this is my family, because in Yoruba culture, that's it. You marry, families marry. And so you were like, saw them as family. But then now with distance, is there any like, did you have any clarity on the way they behaved then now? Would you say that they were complicit in his behavior? Would you say they enabled? Would you say that they protected you? And that even if they did, what was their motivation for doing it?
So, Toro, there are many factors in all of that. And I'm glad you're actually guiding me towards that, because that's what I'm trying to even explain to you guys, in that I stayed much longer than I needed to because of his family, because I actually took them as my own. I really cared for them. I really loved them. I felt they loved me too because of all the things that they did. And so when I now look at things now with clarity, see how they are behaving towards me, the antagonizing, the everything, I finally just understood that, oh my God, I see clearly I was under an illusion. What I wrongly interpreted as love then was actually them manipulating me. They were trauma bonding me. They were grooming me to remain there. So I shared, I believe in the last episode or a couple episodes back, how there was a lot of things that didn't make sense about his family. I would see the infighting that they would do amongst themselves. I would see the mistreatment amongst themselves and with other people, especially his dad. His dad was a scary character to me because it seemed like there was a dark cloud whenever this guy showed up. You know how these fathers, when they show up and everybody's running, everybody's... I didn't grow up like that. So it was always so tense that once this man walks into a room, the environment is tense. Their family, they have a WhatsApp group that has him inside and one that doesn't have him inside. And the vibe on the two WhatsApp groups are very different. Do you get what I mean? Like, so he had that kind of presence, but the guy used to treat me in a way that was different from how he treated other people. And it used to make me afraid. Once I come and visit him like this, the way the guy will choke hand in his pockets in that his agbada and bring out cash. And you know, I had mentioned in the financial neglect episode that at a point, because the austerity was so bad in the hands of Paulinus with his 50K a month that this man was giving me to take care of myself and my baby and our nanny and himself together, the 50K a month, that I used to show up to his parents' house. The man used to travel a lot, but I used to just time it that, God, let this man be around. So I would show up, I would go there, the guy would choke hand in his pocket, he would give me a wad of cash. So I started to even suspect that like, why is this man so generous towards me, only me? Why is he so loving towards me? Sometimes he would have retorted some ugly thing to his own wife, and then he would face me and he's like, he has, love, So I used to always be afraid to even accept some of this, his generosity and his goodness and his whatever, because it felt like I was the only one that was receiving this treatment. Right. So, of course, now when I look back, I see, I'm like, oh my God, clearly what this guy was trying to do was he was trying to keep me there. He was trying to buy my allegiance. It's almost like he was trying to overcompensate for his son's poor treatment of me, which was evident to everybody. It was obvious that I was being mistreated there, but he was trying to draw a line in the sand and act like, oh, I will take care of you kind of thing. But you're not the one I married, sir. There's no amount of love, generosity, I bought a car, that they're there shouting, that can take away from the fact that the man himself that I married is a piece of shit. There's no dressing pearls on a pig here. And that's, I think, my naivety. It took me a long time to just understand that look, no matter how good his family seems to you, no matter how good it seems they are quote unquote taking care of you, it still doesn't take away from the fact that this man is going to finish you here in this marriage. So part of what now trapped me there is that I thought that his family would protect me in a way. And after he did that, his rubbish in February 2020, where he physically assaulted me, verbally abused me, psychologically all night, right? And I ran to his family. That's where the distrust started, because his mother told me to grow up. His mother treated it as if I had brought it on myself, And so I now started to get a sense of distrust about this family, that it seems like no matter what happens in this marriage, somehow it's my fault. Whereas everybody knows that this guy is the problematic one here. So their own role, I noticed, was to gaslight me into thinking like I'm just making things up. I'm just telling fibs. He's not actually as bad as I'm saying. Even if we are good to you anyways. So Ojoro cancel Ojoro kind of thing. That was their role, pretty much. And so I'm so glad that this guy actually threatened to take my children, because that was the deciding factor there. When he uttered those words, immediately it became clear to me that I have been living in the enemy's camp.
And this is Paulinus' father who made this threat.
Yeah, Paulinus' father. When he threatened me and was like, he's not going to tolerate divorce. And if I should try it, he's going to take my children from me, and he's ready to fight me. And the fact that he now even said, even your mother, knowing the position that my mom holds, he said, even your mother cannot do anything about it. And I would challenge her to the very end. That's how I knew that this guy, for him to utter such threats to me, then every other thing that he thought he was doing there, sowing seeds of goodwill with me, is rubbish. How do you threaten a mother? Nah. It's reprehensible, it's disgusting, and it just shows how black his heart is. So for me, the illusion had already shattered, but his family, I see them clearly for what they are now. And let me just say it clearly right now, I will never forget everything they've done to me. I will never have a relationship with them. I will never allow them to get close to me again. It is just that simple.
Yeah, the boundary.
Anyway, guys, so this episode, we're going to be delving deeper into, I guess, some of what it is that I'll say I saw and endured myself just with Paulinus's dad, his mom, and then his two sisters. I guess we should just go ahead and start, right? So with Paulinus's dad, like I already tried to explain, I never had, for the most part, any issues with this guy. There were lots of things that I saw him do that concerned me. And, I was very alarmed by the things I would observe, the things, his wife, his children would be saying to me. But his treatment of me in particular, I didn't have any particular issues. I was afraid of the goodwill, but he didn't actually do anything to me up until when I had to flee the country, especially after he threatened me and threatened to take the children away from me. That's the first time that I saw that darkness, and I'm so glad that I was able to escape this man's grip. But my talking about him right now is because of the relationship that this man has with Paulinus. So, like from the very beginning of my relationship with Paulinus back then in 2012, this guy would always be talking about his father and the relationship he has with him. And everything this guy would describe, it sounded toxic. At some point, I even had to ask, I was like, does your dad love you? Or I don't even know why I'm laughing, because it just became so much. Every time there will be something, he would say his dad is like this, his dad did this. You know, he mentioned that his dad is jealous of him and is, competing with him. And all of this sounded, again, me, I have a dad, and it's not as if I would say my dad is perfect or anything. My dad too definitely has his issues and all of that. But the things that this guy was telling me about his dad, this sounded otherworldly to me. It sounded like a different kind of vibe. And so that's why I had to ask. One day I asked, I was like, hey, and I tried to be as careful. I tried to ask in the most sensitive manner. I was just like, hey, I'm really concerned about these things that you say about your dad. It doesn't sound like this guy loves you. Maybe you need to start drawing some boundaries with him. Maybe you just need to keep him at a distance and stuff like that. And then the way the guy just zeroed in on me, and he was just like, this is the devil or something, as if he was trying to bind and cast me. That was the approach. So I never mentioned anything like that again to him. Every time this guy would go on and everything, I just started to see that it's not as if he wanted any guidance from me. He didn't want my opinion.
Just wanted to vent.
He just wanted...
or emotionally dump.
Yeah, that's the right. He just wanted to dump on me all these harsh and horrible things that this guy would say about his father. But then he will now leave me to hold the cognitive dissonance, because when we now show up to his parents' house, he flips 360. He's so deferential. He's so,
cheesing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The way he's treating his dad there. And me, I'll just be there looking like, this cannot be. So he just left me in cognitive dissonance. I never understood what his relationship with his dad really was, because on one hand, he has all these horrible things to say. He's abusing the man. He's calling the man all sorts of things. But then on the other hand, we get there, very presence of the man is a completely different thing. So me, I never understood that relationship. But what alarmed me the most was how the two of them would fight. It would get violent. This Paulinus and his dad. Physical. I remember before we even got married, when he told me one particular story like this, I said, what? And he was like, I don't even want to even start getting into the details, guys, because to be honest, all of this is irrelevant, because I really don't care about these people. I don't care for them. And I'm doing this just to kind of paint a clearer picture for you guys that are listening to Authenticity Warrior, in that this is where this Paulinus is coming from. Getting into physical altercations with your own father. All the more reason why I was very shocked with the stand that his family took. They're just so incensed that I left this man. In their minds, they feel like they're exposed now. So right now, I see everything that they're doing as them just trying to jump ahead to discredit me, so that in case I start saying about some of the things that I saw in their family, people can already know not to take my word for it. Because that's the only way I can describe their antagonism. They're trying to gaslight, they're lying, they're threatening my family.
Right.
Everything they did is because these are people that actually have things to hide. And they're afraid that I saw too much. And now I'm going to start talking, because they counted on me never leaving this man. So anyway, that is really all I have to say about Paulinus's dad, in that the relationship that Paulinus and his dad have, it is appalling. And I used to be very concerned, and I would tell him, because I could see him replicating it with our boys. The power plays, the domination, the all of that. And I'll be like, you always talk about the relationship with your dad, about how rubbish it is. And I'm just like, I see you replicating it with these boys. You guys are just going to continue this generational curse. And I will try and tell him, and especially that his anger and his rage and his temper. But
speaking of his rage and his temper, did his father ever witness Paulinus's behavior towards you?
Oh, yes, of course. Oh, my goodness. So this was December 2019. We had gone back to Ekiti, and Paulinus got into a rage at me for whatever reason. Honestly, guys, as usual, I cannot even tell you what happened. I wish, even though there's no justification for all the raging, I honestly wish maybe I'd even done something. I wish I could say, yes, I did this, and this is why he behaved like that. I cannot tell you what I did. But bottom line, this guy, he shouted. All I just remember him saying was like, my friend, I'm your husband. When I tell you something, that is all I can even remember about how he spoke to me. And his dad was hosting guests. And the way their house was their house carried sound because it's kind of like a circle shape on the inside. So it carried sound to other areas of the house. So his dad was so embarrassed. His dad ran out. I remember he was wearing his agbada. He ran out because the guy just kept on going, blah, 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 blah. So his dad ran out and was like, what is the problem? What is going on? What is going on? That, can't you see I have people here kind of thing? Paulinus just stormed off, walked away. Me, I'm already in tears at this point. And his dad is asking me, Kilo Shele, tell me what happened? What happened? Like I was so overwhelmed. Me too, I even walked away kind of thing. Bottom line is, by the time, and I just locked myself away in the room, the following day, every morning they used to make us go to chapel to go and be doing whatever. That morning, I couldn't even go. I stayed home because I was so embarrassed. Because all this while that Paulinus had been doing his nonsense, it seemed like I didn't really have witnesses other than maybe my nanny. But for the first time now, I felt so exposed that, now everybody's seeing my mistreatment. I felt so embarrassed that, God, like people are going to be looking at me funny now.
That's interesting again about, the person being victimized, holding the shame of their own victimization. Yeah.
So the following day, his mom now came to come and meet me, and her own was, why didn't I come to chapel that morning? And so I now explained that, look, like what Paulinus did to me, I was embarrassed to face people, to be looked down on that, see what he did to her kind of thing. Bottom line, his dad summons me to his room and he starts going on and on that he heard that I'm a feminist, that...
I roll.
No, seriously, that he heard I'm a feminist. Then he now started to go on this long speech that, look, that I should not be doing all that kind of thing, that I'm a married woman now. That because his younger sister, Junior Pepeye, that one, and that's why we bonded a lot. We were very close. We were like sisters because I felt she had progressive views about women and all of that. So his dad now even said, that don't be joining that one, no. The word he actually used was, that one is a Taliban in this household. Don't go and be joining her that you're a married woman, you listen to your husband. In his mind, you're just quote unquote giving me what he thought was good advice. That this feminism thing, you're a married woman, no, you can't be doing that one here. And you listen to your husband. Blah, 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 blah. Only for years later for me to realize that it is Paulinus' mother. This woman was not even there. She did not even know what happened, what caused this Paulinus to rage at me. But for me to now realize that she's the one that now went behind to go and whisper to this old man that, hey, it's because she's a feminist. She doesn't listen to her husband when her husband is talking to her, all that kind of stuff. Because I'll get into her own matter later. But bottom line is, this man himself had seen, and he was so alarmed by the behavior. So this is not something that they themselves can deny and say they had never seen before.
Yet they did.
Yeah.
But they did. That didn't stop them.
Exactly. Yes, they did. They denied, at that family meeting, they denied any knowledge of anything at all and just tried to paint it as if I'm making things up. I'm lying against Paulinus. I'm lying against them. So that's all I have to say really about the man. I see him clearly for what he is. He's a master manipulator. And he was trying to buy my allegiance and buy my love and buy my own imprisonment in that place. And I'm so glad that I clear. And I said, I beg, enough is enough.
Okay, so that's the take on Paulinus' dad. So now we move on to the other members of his family. And these are the women in the family. So his mother, his older sister, really close in age, like about a year older. And then his younger sister, who's quite a bit younger, almost a decade, about 8 years, if I remember correctly. So, you had said something, I'm not sure if it was in this episode or the last episode, you had said something specific about women who play a role in upholding and enabling patriarchy, misogyny, the hate and the harm of other women. And how they're the ones who really legitimize the oppression. And this cuts across like so many different binaries. You'll find trans people who will align with cis people at the harm of the greater trans community. You'll find Black people who will align with white supremacy to the harm and detriment of everyone who's not a straight white man. You know what I mean? So these are women who, as women, can relate, both married and unmarried, can relate to this abusive condition. And yet, when time comes to show, they show where their allegiances lie, which is with the abuser, with the oppressor.
Yeah, they never feel to full hand. Oh, they fold hands so well. For me, again, I am so sad that I was even shocked because now I know better. I'm like, oh yeah, these guys could not have helped me because they themselves are very comfortable in their own oppression. So for them, they're looking at me as, are you the only one? They are looking at me as, and so what? They are looking at me as like, how dare you leave and leave us here? Because I'll start with Paulinus's mom. That woman too again. At first, when I got introduced to this man's family, from jump, she was already trauma bonding. From jump, she was already telling me all these deep things about her marriage, about Paulinus's dad, about Paulinus and all the trouble he kind of put her through. So at first, I didn't know what to make of it because I came from a family where we didn't really, that's one of the issues that I had with my family where I felt like we always swept things under the rug. So at first, I didn't know what to make of this kind of openness. I thought, I guess maybe this is how other family, maybe this is what it looks like when you don't sweep things under the rug. So I was uncomfortable, but I just took it as, maybe this is her really just trying to welcome me into their family and show that, I'm one of them. So that's why she's telling me all these heavy things about her marriage, heavy things about her children. Sometimes she will use some certain things to describe her children. And I'll be wondering, I'm like, how are you talking about your children like this? I would think that maybe she's a Yoruba woman. Maybe she doesn't know the English, the proper English word she's trying to use. So she's using this heavy word, that actually means something really, really bad. I'll just justify it and explain it away that way. But from the very beginning, that was the dynamic. It was just very clear to me that this woman was an abused woman. Now, anybody can go and knock their head against the wall, whether they agree with my analysis or not. This is my own analysis. This woman has been deeply abused in her marriage for decades. And my heart actually breaks for her because it is almost copy and paste the abuse I endured in the hands of Paulinus. And this is actually what scared me and what made me pack up and say, absolutely not, I cannot continue here, is because I saw this thing is a generational curse. This thing that Paulinus' father started and what created the monster that is Paulinus. I have 3 boys. This thing is about to replicate again. If I stay in this marriage and allow these boys grow up here, these boys are gone. They are finished.
And they'll be let loose on the world.
As in, that's where I said, absolutely not. I am not going to stay here and be an enabling influence of this abuse, which is where Paulinus' mom did not have the strength to do. Now, I'm not knocking her for that because I understand the mind of a victim because I've been one. I understand that mind. I've been there of an abused person. I've been there. I understand it. And I know that it is difficult to leave, which is why it took me so long to leave. But where I will not give her any grace is when she saw that I had left. I'm the kind of person that if I cannot help you in your escape, at the very least, I wouldn't sabotage you. But this woman, knowing fully well everything that I had endured, she went ahead and aligned with my abuser. She went ahead and denied everything, no knowledge of anything at all. She tried to paint me as mentally unstable. It was from her mouth that I kept on hearing this postpartum depression. And that's what made me very scared that, it's like these people are plotting to go and confine me somewhere in Yaba left. She kept on showing up to my house in that 10 days that I was in Nigeria from when I had come back into the country. She was just showing up and then she'll be dropping subtle comments at Abby. Is it postpartum depression? I'm like, I'm not. I don't have that issue. I've never had it, but she will not let it rest. So I now realized that, this woman has been an active participant. She had tried to bond with me as if, we are in this together. These men, they don't have sense, they do this, they do that, because that's what she prefers. That's what she likes. She wants us to sit down around the campfire and be abusing them. Can you imagine what my own husband did today? Can you imagine? That is as far as the bonding she wants to go. That's as far as the camaraderie she wants to have. But when rubber hits the road where it's like, look, I can't take it anymore. She's one of those women that side with the patriarchy that, no, you must not leave. You must stay there and die. After all, she has been there enduring it. What makes you special that you want to leave? that you are saying you can't endure.
Or they bring religion into it that, you're the one that's not.
Yeah, the one that
you get your strength from God, your faith, your this, your that to bear it.
I told you guys that on the back of this February 2020 incident, where this Paulinus was just abhorrent, physical, emotional, psychological, verbal abuse on end for hours. This woman faced me and said I should grow up. I have never seen this woman ever face her son and say anything to him. It was always me. She's the one that, again, like I said, went behind to go and be whispering to Paulinus' dad that, hey, it's because I'm a feminist. I don't listen. So I started to see that, under all of the, she's giving me food to eat. Under all of the, when I have a child in Canada, she's there to do a mugu to help, these different things. Under all of that was deep-seated hatred and actually jealousy, and just this woman was angry that I was empowered. While I was there chopping all this abuse, she could see the strength in me and the fact that I had an inner strength that I think she didn't have and she hated about me. And that is why at every opportunity she had, she sabotaged me. She tried to make it seem like I was the one that was the problem. This woman has very clear, intimate knowledge of Paulinus and his anger issues, his abuse. This is someone that from his secondary school, this guy had been suspended how many times? Even expelled in his final year. They had to beg the school to let him write his exams. For beating a child up. That child was hospitalized. He even told me that they actually confined him to a psych ward because what the school said was, it can't be a human being that beats another child like this.
Goodness.
That it can't be a normal person. So he said they confined him for the weekend or something there. They separated him from just general society. So his parents are well aware, and especially his mother, she's the one that continues to enable this Paulinus and his behavior.
Boy moms, listen up.
Boy moms, especially when the mother is in an abusive relationship, usually what they now do is they'll now go and latch onto their son. They now have this weird relationship. Are you people...
emotionally incestuous, just
yes.
Intimacy abuse.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's the kind of relationship that she has with Paulinus. So even down to when Paulinus himself was telling me about all the nonsense he got up to in Toronto, this guy would get into fights, breaking bottles. If you look at his body, he has scars all over, even on his face, his head. He has a scar on his hairline that it's like they had stabbed his head with a broken bottle. Even down to the fact that this guy himself, this is not, them say, because me, I was not there, but Paulinus himself told me about how this guy spent time in jail. He himself spent time in jail in Toronto. This was sometime in either 2000, I don't, maybe 2008 or something, or 9. This is what he said to me. And how his mother was running from pillar to post trying to save him. Somehow, I think the charges got dropped. I don't know what his parents went to go and do to go and intimidate the person that dropped the charges. All these different things, they have been cleaning up this guy's mess from jump. Paulinus himself told me that his secondary school, because he had such a horrible record there. Some of these stories, when you'll be telling me, I'll be like, it can't be true. Because they always seem so fantastical to me that, he told me how he burnt down his school's administrative building.
To get rid of his records.
Yeah, he burnt it down.
Wow.
Arson, and he was like, nobody knows that it's him that did it. Paulinus, from his own mouth, he said that to me. And of course, I can't really verify. This is Nigeria. Who even knows? Does it even appear in any newspaper clippings? I wouldn't know. Like I said, I started to get a sense that it feels like this guy is not really okay. So sometimes when he's rambling and he's saying this is stories about the violence he got up to, the burning down a school building, going to jail, I used to interpret it as part of my own abuse, that maybe he's just trying to intimidate me and let me know that this is what I can do, kind of thing. Because some of this was information I couldn't really verify. I don't know where to ask. So I would just shove it out of my mind because this is all very alarming.
Yeah.
It's very alarming, and honestly, I would prefer if none of this is true. So I'll just pretend as if it's not true. There's no way. Only for me to find out that some of these things were actually in fact true. His mother saying it, that Nkonti Paulinus Fojumiri. So for me, again, I fear people that have Stockholm syndrome because they're the ones that will actually fight you to the death. If you try and escape, you try and leave. It is the people that have bought into their own oppression that will fight you the hardest. And that is the mistake that I made with this woman, even just feeling like, oh, because we've both been oppressed, she would understand. She would actually have my back. She will actually, do you know what I
That's
mean?
you projecting yourself onto her.
I guess, like you said, because that's what I would do. So I just assumed that she would do it too, but honestly. And I guess the final thing I'll say about Paulinus's mom, because I don't care for her, and the reason why I'm speaking about her is because how dare she try and take my children? How? And she spewed all these lies. She said, because in his documents in Ekiti, when he was filing his papers in Ekiti, he lied and said it is his mother that's been their primary caregiver and she's been the one taking care of my children. This woman that spends, after 2020, things changed a bit, but prior to then, she spent much of her time in Canada. Because of all the bills that they have in Canada, she used to work as a nurse to try and pay their mortgage and pay this and pay that. Because again, in true abuser fashion, all these abusers, they just leave everything in they put people in financial mess, all for their ego. So this woman who had been in Canada, she'll be working, paying for the house, paying for the car, paying for blah, 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 doing all of that. So this woman was hardly ever in Nigeria. So for her to now rubber stamp that bold-faced lie before a court and say that she has been the primary caregiver of the children, all because of what? Because she just managed to do small omugwo for me when I was in Canada, of which she was never the only one there. I always had my sisters there. I always had my mother. If I didn't have my mother, I would have my sister. My sister is the one that cut the cord. Like, what are we talking about here? Any small thing, any small favor, any small goodwill gesture that these people would ever do for you, they'll try and blow it out of proportion and turn it into something as if you owe them your life force, your literal life force. So because of the small omugwo that you did for 3-4 weeks, that now makes you the primary caregiver of my children. And you're now trying to take my children from me. Let's not even get into the serious health issues that this woman and her husband have. Is it now them that will now be running after 3 young boys, taking care of them? The man, he's severely diabetic. She has serious liver issues. The 2 of them almost died at some point. Doing all this just because yet again, they want to enable their son and his bad behavior, and they want to cover it all up and sweep it under the rug. Their reputation is the one that matters to them. They don't actually care about the best interests of my children. They don't care about who they hurt, who they destroy. Where do they do that at? Devastate a mother, all because to protect this MFR of a son that you have. That number one will not even appreciate it because the guy is a true ingrate. In their attempts to try and wrestle my children from me, it's them that will be stuck with the children because that Paulinus does not have sense. He doesn't care about them and he will now leave them all in their hands. So it's now the 2 old people with her hands that are already so full taking care of that Paulinus's dad. She now wants to add 3 children to it. And this woman stood before a court in Ekiti. She jumped into the witness box and had some outlandish things to say about me. And that she's ready to take the children. That she's a mother, she's ready. Because my lawyer, I remember he asked her, he said, madam, you are over 60 and with your health issues and with everything, you want to be the primary caregiver of these 3 children. And she said, yes, that's what's being a mother now. This is in court documents. So please, anybody can go and verify. I'm not being outlandish here. All because what? I just said, I no do again. I don't want to marry this boy again. That is why they have now stood there and tried to attack me. Anyway, I think I've said all that I need to say about this woman. Before I forget, just even one last thing. Because this one, I didn't even know about it until my nanny told me. Because I had gone to Canada to have my 3rd child. I was away for about 6 months. This was an unusually long time for me to be away, but I had to be away for that long. And so it was my nanny that told me. My nanny's mom was ill, so she had to go take care of her mom. And I told this Paulinus, take my children to my parents' house because I know my parents, they have the support and it's just them. Like my dad is very hands-on. My mom is very hands-on. They have the help to handle these two young boys. But Paulinus refused. He went to go and carry them to his own parents' house. His dad is hardly ever around. Even if he is, he doesn't lift a finger to help with anything. He doesn't do anything that would be worthy of saying, okay, he's assisting in the care of the children. He doesn't do any of that. The mother is overwhelmed. His mom is overwhelmed with everything that she has to do because of just the dynamic of her relationship with her husband. She does everything in that house. This woman is stressed and she doesn't have all the help that she needs. Only for my nanny to tell me that when she came back, my son was telling her that it was their megad that was bathing them.
The security guy, the gates man.
No, you can say security. Me, I'm saying megad.
We have to translate for the audience.
The security guard for their house, the megad, was the one that was bathing my boys. Are you kidding me? And you're the one entering into a witness box saying that you want to take these 3 children. You don't have the fucking time. You don't have the bandwidth. How can your megad be bathing my children? I am so incensed by that. And you know how Nigeria is, the way abuse is so rampant. What the hell? All because this Paulinus, he's always so prickly about the children. He was always so self-conscious and, just jealous that, my parents, like he always makes such a big deal that, why do they have to stay with my own parents? All because he just did not want my children to be in my own parents' house where they would have been more comfortable. He went to go and stash them in his own parents' house. He was not even there. His mother was barely around, and then it's now the mega that was bathing the children. So, again, that's how I know that plus Paulinus, plus his family, none of them have sense. They just don't have sense because I don't know what they're fighting for.
It doesn't seem like it's in the best interest of the children, but we move. All right, guys. So we took a little bit of a beat just to take a breath because things were starting to feel a little bit charged, understandably so. But Bebe, before we move on to talking about the rest of Paulinus's family members, I want to draw us back to something that you had mentioned a little earlier while you were talking about Paulinus's mother, and that was, you said something about generational cycles, a generational pattern there, and, seeing and knowing that were you to stay there and remain in that toxic, abusive environment with Paulinus, you saw, your son's future and what they could turn out into, which is, hurt, broken individuals who end up growing up in a patriarchal society, which then enables them to hurt other people around them as well. And, you took that stand in saying, no, I'm going to break this cycle. But in seeing your son's future, I wonder if in observing Paulinus's mom, you saw your future as well in, should you have chosen to remain with an abusive partner and raising your children there, and essentially enabling an abusive environment around them. So did you see your future in her? And if you did, what did you see?
This is a very heavy question. I'm not going to lie. Generational curses. Because I think that's actually the word I used. I said generational curse because it really is a curse. The short answer is yes. I saw my future right there looking at me. I think I'd mentioned already that the nature in which she herself, Paulinus's mother, was being abused was almost copy and paste, similar to mine. The only thing that I ever remember her ever touting and saying is, my husband and I, we fight every day, but he has never laid a finger on me. That's just the one thing that I think she always touted as some sort of prize. But I myself had witnessed the emotional, the psychological, the financial abuse.
And, we had also talked about physical abuse earlier, that it's not just when someone lays a finger on you, like using their rage, their loudness, their physicality around you, people holding them back, all that kind of stuff.
Which was something that I knew very much happened between them as a couple. The way the guy would fight, scream, shout, break things, people are holding him back, That's how they fight. So he may have never actually put hand to body and actually touched her, but he still physically intimidated her whenever they got into it, So I'm saying all of this to say that, yes, I looked at this woman, and you know what? Let me not even make it personal as if it's just her. I am so many of us, our mothers stayed despite the breakfast that they chopped in the hands of our fathers. And so all my life, I'd looked all around me and I'd seen a lot of bitter, angry, resentful women.
And it should also be noted, sorry to just jump in and interrupt you there, that breakfast, it does not stop with the mothers or the wives. The children, we are here chopping, healing, unraveling, peeling back layers, doing therapy, doing the work, because it damages the children too.
Exactly.
And as a child, who now has children of her own, who recognizes the effect it has on children, you also wanted to break that because you knew that you alone could not shield all the breakfast. It will always overflow past the mother.
That's what I'm trying to even say to her, that's why I looked at these children. I said, I have seen what it is to stay. The narrative generally is women stay for the sake of their children. But I've seen that doesn't even work. The children are broken. The children are confused because you can't stay and then be covering, like, a lot of women stay, but then they muddy the waters because they confuse the children. The children can see and experience that there's hatred here. They confuse the children because they can see the dysfunction. They can see that something isn't right here. But then you guys are staying together. So you're almost
normalizing. Yeah.
You're normalizing the toxicity, you're gaslighting your children,
and you're giving them such tolerance for it. You're building them up to tolerate that.
Exactly.
So that when they become adults, they then just more easily accept it.
Exactly. That tolerance building, that is what I did not want for them, because that's something that I had the capacity. I did not. The things that I endured in the hands of Paulinus, I never saw my mom endure even up to that. But I had built up the capacity anyways, and my own temperament too as well. I'm very tenacious. I can stick something through. All of that fed into me staying in a space that I knew was unhealthy for me. Now, circling back again to how I saw this Paulinus's mom and what I saw, this cannot be my future, is I saw in this woman a lot of resentment, a lot of, to the point where sometimes I used to question, I'm like, does this woman actually love her children? Because of the way she would talk about them to me. So I just used to make up a lot of excuses that, okay, it's because she's just living a hard life. Her husband is very abusive towards her. She's trying to cope. Her religion is telling her to stay, tradition, all of these things. So she's just trying to cope as best as she can. But I saw the negativity, the resentment spill up and bubble out in so many different ways. Sometimes in terms of competing for the man's resources or his attention, I will find her doing weird things like that, competing with her children about, because the guy is so tight-fisted. He doesn't pour into her as much as he draws out from her. So she's often exposed, often raw, petty things that I think shouldn't even be an issue. She'll call me and she'll be talking to me about it and this and that. One of her daughters, she's spending her husband's money and this one down. And okay, how much is it? Okay, so should he not spend money on his children, kind of thing? You know that kind of thing where it's like, because she's suffering in his hands, she is upset when other people seem to be benefiting from the man, including the fact that it's even her own children too. It warps your mind that way. I think that even to the point where, of course, that children should enjoy from their parents, but because you've been put in such a survival state in his hands, even that is difficult for you to tolerate. Do you get what I mean? So what I really, really dislike about what this woman used me to do is I was her dumping ground. She said, she told me all sorts of things about her husband, the way he would harm her, the way he would hurt her, the things he would call her, the nasty things he would say and do to her, this and that, especially in comparison to how he
treats other people, especially, some of his female friends and stuff like that. She will always complain. He's very generous with them. He buys things for them, expensive things and stuff like that. And then for her, he doesn't really do anything for her, And, for me, it was even the financial neglect that I was often very upset about, because people who know this man, they look at him as a rich man, he's generous, he's this and that. But in the house, she herself, she's never a beneficiary of any of it. I mentioned again about how he seemingly bought me a car, but his wife is the one that is in desperate need for a car. Why is he buying me a car? Do you get what I mean? So there was definitely a lot of resentment. And, especially for someone like me too, that he seemed to have shone his good graces on me. I see why she was sabotaging me here and there. I see why she was like, she was having issues with me, because here, when you're put in survival mode, and it's almost like you're like a caged bird, like both friend or foe, you're going to bite. Do you get? So, which is why, when her feelings about him, talking about how she doesn't want to spend time with him, why she runs away to Canada often. I mean, there was a time that we were both in Canada. It happened to be her birthday, and she dodged his calls all day. And I was asking, I was like, why don't you pick his call? Because like he was just calling relentlessly back to back, and she was just like, I beg, she doesn't want any negative energy on her birthday and things like that. And I remember feeling a little somehow, I'm like, what do you mean by negative energy? Like even on her birthday, she was just trying to avoid the man. And you ask, okay, why is she even often in Canada anyways? Number one, the financial peril that this man puts this family into, she has to go to Canada almost all the time so that she can work and she can be taking care of their bills there. He doesn't give her money like that. Nothing. For me, I see where all the resentment is playing out, but the issue with this Paulinus and his family is they will not address their issues, and they keep it all bottled up, and then it bubbles out in the most toxic, the most disgusting ways, lashing out at each other. They will never tell themselves what their issue is, but then something random, something petty, something that has nothing to do with anything happens, and it is the whole family is turned upside down. Then she will also talk about her children too to me. They are ungrateful. They are this and that. They are always using her husband for this and like. I would always be left with all the toxicity she would dump it on me. So, sometimes I would try and give advice. I don't know what she wants me to do with all this information. Do you get what I'm saying? So what I really again resent is I looked at her and I'm just like, is it because it's because this woman stayed now? She stayed for her children. She stayed because her religion told her to. But look at her. She's so angry and resentful at the world because of that decision of her to stay, and doing toxic things like I said, dumping onto me and saying all these things that would even be causing an outsider like me to be questioning, it doesn't sound like this woman loves these people that she claims to love, that she claimed to have sacrificed all these things for. Do you get what I mean? So I looked at myself and I said, look, I don't ever want to have that confusion about whether or not I love my children, because the resentment and the anger from all the hurt I've endured is just so much, it even clouds my own judgment about love. Do you get what I mean? Doing things that seemingly looks like love, but is actually sabotaging them. Do you get what I mean? So I don't want to I feel like I'm speaking in mysterious ways, because I don't want to be delving too much into the details about these people and their lives, because ultimately, like I said, it really doesn't matter. But I do definitely want it to be on record that, look, the monster that created Paulinus, I look directly at his family. I look at all the harm that his own father caused in that family. I look at the harm that this woman herself endured and carried on her back. And then I look at how her singular decision to stay despite everything then poured out onto the children and affected them in many different ways that continues to play out even now. And that to me it's like, what kind of life are we really living at this point? What really was the reason to stay at this point? So without belaboring the point, I think for me, just the very fact that I chose to leave was radical in itself, and is something that my children are really young. They may not understand it now, but I believe, I am trusting in the fact that when they are older, they can look back and see that there was a shift in something. You know, the very fact that I took myself out from being an enabling influence in there has broken something major and has given them a chance to move forward in this world in a better way, in a different way than what Paulinus was even afforded, you know?
So the next person that we're going to talk about is Bebe, Paulinus's older sister, who, I mean, for me, for the most part, has just kind of been like a background character until, like, through the relationship and the marriage, until, you know, your escape. And then suddenly it seemed like Bebe seemed to start featuring a lot more than I had first thought, because you and Mommy started receiving you received a bunch of emails from her as well. I don't know what it is with this family and the emails, but a bunch of just weird and disrespectful emails.
Very bizarre emails too.
Yeah. So
to be honest, I never really read them, other than number one, they were just way too many. Like, why the fuck are you talking to me? Number one, like, who the hell are you? Where do I know you from? How do you feature in this matter? Because honestly and truly, I didn't really have a relationship with her. When I had come to Canada for my third child, you know, I told you they stashed me in their basement in their house there. She and her husband lived upstairs. You know, we had never really been in the same geographical location, so we never really had a relationship. But I assumed that, okay, maybe now we're now here together, we could start to build something. But I was very shocked that, you know, I got to Canada and she seemed very distant. In a way, I started to understand it a little. I felt like, oh, maybe it's my pregnancy. Maybe I'm triggering her in a way. So I didn't want to be insensitive. So I just used to give her space. So for those of you that are wondering, this is quite weird, what do you mean? So she and her husband are on their TTC journey, and TTC means trying to conceive. So she and her husband are on that journey. So I started to feel like, oh, maybe my pregnancy was a triggering point for her, because they've been married for 10 years now. The month I got pregnant, that was when they had just run their first IVF cycle. And it didn't work. So I used to be very careful with her. I didn't want to make her feel any way. So me too, I just used to day my day. Occasionally, we'll just do nice things for each other. Maybe if they buy water, they buy water for me too. If I buy something, I buy something for them too. Sometimes maybe if they are buying food, they ask me, do I want anything? But that was the height of our interactions. You know, she had a birthday party upstairs there. I tried to attend. I stayed to the very end, to like 2-3 a.m. with my pregnant belly, like I was so tired, but just keep them company. But what I noticed was her relationship with her husband did not make sense to me.
What do you mean by that? How so?
It's like when you now get a closer look at something, you're like, this thing doesn't make sense here. I just noticed that it felt like there was some sort of picture or narrative that she was trying to put out about her relationship, because she's very vocal on social media and stuff. And that was just the height of what I knew about her and her relationship, until I got closer last year by actually coming and living inside the basement there. So occasionally when I would go upstairs just say, hey, let's not be as if I'm not Kinney. So sometimes occasionally I will go upstairs. And, you know, I just used to notice that the relationship that she has with her husband is something else. They seemed very distant. The guy, is like, he's in this part of the house, she's in that part of the house. It didn't really seem like there was a lot of meshing going on there, which seemed a little unusual to me, especially when, you know, you're on that TTC journey. You know, sometimes I imagine that being on that journey together would even bring you closer together or something. But for them, there just seemed to be this wide distance that I couldn't explain. Only for one of these instances for her to like call me up. We were both supposed to go somewhere. Her husband had said he wasn't going, but she had already bought a ticket. Yeah, I think it was to Wonderland or something. So he refused and said he wasn't going anymore. He said he didn't take time off work. So she had this ticket and she was like, oh, maybe I should just use it. Even with my pregnant belly, I love amusement parks. So me, I'm just like, even if I can't go on the rides, I want to go and watch other people having fun. So I said I will go. Only for the day we were supposed to go, she just called me. She was crying. And so I go and she was sitting down in the car. I go out to meet her and she's seriously upset. She's crying. She's like, she can't be consoled. Then she starts talking and then telling about her marriage. And, I feel for her. My heart breaks for her because I'm just like, gosh, she doesn't deserve this kind of treatment. This guy, outward facing, he looks like he's a certain kind of way, but on the inside, this is how he's maltreating her. This is how he's breaking her down and all of that. So I started to get a sense that, their relationship, it's not making sense. So, but she's very, very religious. And one of those people that feel like, oh, maybe you have to die there kind of thing. So I started to just already respect that this is not the kind of person that I can be trying to say, maybe have you considered leaving this relationship? Because I just knew that she just didn't want to hear it. So I'm saying all of this to say that this is somebody that we weren't close. And over the last year where I was pregnant and, was having my baby in Canada, fine, there was some level of intimacy that got added into the equation. But overall, we just were not close. And that's just the simple fact. So I did not understand when, after I left this Paulinus, I started to receive a barrage of emails from this girl. And she would write paragraphs on paragraphs on paragraphs about this and that, defending Paulinus to me, defending her family to me, trying to justify that, all of this and all of that. Because again, part of why I even kept my distance from this Pepeye is that when Paulinus had physically abused me and assaulted me in February 2020, I'd spoken to her and everything, she had actually told me to leave the marriage, which, was sound advice in contrast to her mom that told me to grow up kind of thing. But I started to keep my distance because I still felt like she was siding with him kind of, like not siding with him, but it still felt like she was trying to like pretend like, oh, what he did wasn't so bad, that, oh, this is just how marriage is. That, this is just part of what it is to be married kind of thing. But she was like, oh, if I should definitely leave if I can't stay and all of that. She had tried to make overtures that, oh, she has spoken to him. He's sorry. He has apologized and all of that and everything. But bottom line, I just didn't feel safe or comfortable with her. So me, I really just used to keep my distance. So I just don't understand why she felt the need to just be messaging me. And these emails she was sending to me, she was now copying my mom. For some reason, she had gotten my mom's email one way or the other. So she would not be copying my mom in this her disrespectful, like long-winded emails.
Sometimes even calling you out like, oh, I let you into, I don't even know.
Yeah, she was trying to say, I let you into my home, and I took care of you. That you have family in Canada. Why didn't you go and stay with your own family? And I'm just like, first of all, is it that basement that you're telling me, you're shouting, you let me into your home, that you will not let us rest now? When I could have stayed with my family, even if I didn't have family in Canada, I have friends in Canada. I was in Canada for almost 10 years before I moved to Nigeria. I had so many options of where I could have stayed. But because of this Paulinus and his insecurity, I could never stay anywhere else. I could never stay with my own family. My sister has a huge house in Calgary. I could never stay with her. I could never stay with any of my friends because it will now become such a huge thing. So I always had to bend myself and stay small and just stay in this small little accommodation that the man said I should stay. So that's what she's now trying to say, that they housed me in their home and I'm being an ingrate. See how I am treating them. That why did I leave? That why did I have to live in such a manner that I've, she now, what was even upsetting, she now made the whole email about her, that how she is suffering. And what she's going through. And I'm like, whatever it is you're going through, can you be going through more than what I'm going through? What the hell are we saying here?
Take it to the altar. Yeah.
So, again, is when I talk about people like this that buy into their own oppression and would rather spend time talking about her husband behind his back with her mother. And he's fat. And he's lazy. He only plays game from morning till night. And he's a selfish guy. And I don't like spending time with him. And we don't have anything to talk about. We are not the same. And I'm just like, girl, rather than you and your mom talking my ear off about how terrible your marriage is, freaking leave. Like me, I looked at my own situation. Me, I felt I was trapped. I didn't have a choice.
But I look at her and I'm just like, girl, you're even more empowered than I am. Get out of here, you know? And, sometimes I'll try and subtly make those suggestions to her mother, and they would look at me like I have just said the worst thing in the world, that, especially her mom, she'd be like, hey, please, we are Christians. We don't believe in divorce. We don't believe in separation. That her marriage, I don't know if she ever listens to this podcast. I would just advise her, you better get out of there before that man will finish you there. And this is me just doing you a favor. I'm telling you now, based off of what I saw there, you better leave. But if you like, stay there. That's your own concern. Again, I didn't appreciate the energy I got from her. And this is someone, again, that knows her brother. She corroborated his violent past to me, told me about everything that he used to do in secondary school, the violence, the fights, how he beat people up. She told me herself too, because again, like my sister already said, they are a year apart. So they were in secondary school at the same time for at least 5 years together. So she saw a lot and she corroborated them to me. So I don't know why his whole family, they're all trying to pretend as if they don't know what's going on there.
Another thing that she really did that just stood out as like, why would you even, was you say that you told her of the incident that happened in 2020 and she actually said you should leave. Mm-hmm. But then recently, this is somebody who has also taken the stand to then deny that event happened or diminish it like semantics.
So I guess that was the biggest thing that she now then did, because Paulinus and I have been in court proceedings both in Nigeria and in Canada. And so in Canada, she decided to come and take the stand. Because, of course, the guy doesn't have friends. He doesn't have anybody. His father, his mother, his sister that he's using to be taking stands there. So she came into the witness box and basically bold-faced lied that I never told her that I was being abused. I never told her this guy had physically assaulted me. Whereas, thankfully, we had text messages documented there. So when my lawyer now presented it to her, she now started to backtrace that actually what happened was when I had told her, she wasn't really sure if I was telling her the truth, because, she hadn't yet spoken to Paulinus yet, so that she was only just simply trying to just commiserate with me, that she was still going to try and find out the truth from Paulinus and everything. Do you get what I mean?
His side, yeah.
Yeah. So because the text messages were damning, they had shown that, I had told her and she had acknowledged and she had commiserated. She had been like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, blah, blah, blah. But on the stand, she now started to waffle about and try and backtrace. But it was very clear. The evidence was there. So again, for her to stand there and try and call me a liar is what I cannot tolerate. And that's why I would never have anything to do with her. I have nothing to say to her. So I think that's all I will say about this Pepeye. She should continue in her Pepeye ways. God be with her.
So the last family member of his that we're going to talk about is Junior Pepeye. This is his younger sister. And from what I understand, this is the one that you actually had somewhat of a close relationship with, was actually friends with. And, her conduct after your escape is the one that kind of felt the most betraying, hurt the most. So, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah. So this is the one that, like you said, it really hurt the most. Because this is someone that I still actually thought that, you know what, even after I leave this man, I don't know what's going to come after it. But this is the one relationship that I'm going to make sure that I preserve, because I really cared for her. I really saw the tight spot that she was in this family. She was like the scapegoat of the family from all sides. It seemed like she was always getting it. It seemed like she was constantly being misunderstood. They constantly had bad things to say about her, and again, like I said, I thought she was like this progressive person, we should, portray ourselves to be a feminist too as well. So we bonded a lot on that. And, I'll just be encouraging her that, look, because sometimes she'll get into some of these funny relationships and I'll just be telling her that, look, I don't think this guy, blah, blah, blah. We bonded a lot. And again, the Pepeye herself, she was married. I hardly ever saw her. But Junior Pepeye, she's unmarried. We were always together, especially when we now do the whole go to Ekiti thing, So she was the one actually in Nigeria. At some point she went to the UK, but she would come back, So she's the one that actually had a relationship. She's the one that we actually went to the same uni in Canada. Apparently it is through her that Paulinus even got to even find out about me. So I definitely took her as my younger sister. She is like a year older than my younger brother. So she really was like a baby sister to me. And I thought that that's a relationship that I'll make sure that I preserve even after leaving this man. But I was so shocked with the behavior. Like, Toro, you will not even believe that I even still had a gift for this girl that I had kept prior to my escape, because I had come back from Canada with my baby, but I hadn't yet met her, but I had gotten like some gifts for her and everything. Even as I escaped, I still found somewhere to go and put her gifts, thinking that in case she ever walks into this house, maybe she'll see her gifts or something stupid. I don't even know what was going through my head then, but I was so shocked. So apparently this girl had called one of my friends and was trying to lay groundwork that she had always known me to be mentally unstable and everything. So I'm under the impression that she was definitely trying to record the conversation, because she was trying to get my friend to go on record and say that, oh, I'm mentally unstable. So she was trying to bait the conversation from my friend. But my friend was just like, what are you talking about? Like, no. Of course, my friend didn't even realize. My friend was like, no, now, like, that's not true. That I've never had that impression about her and everything. So I'm just like, so you mean that you, with the way they've scapegoated you in this family, with your only ally in this house, somehow they managed to convince you to try and bring me down like this. You are there taking the stand in Ekiti and having your colorful things to say about me. I'm like this, I'm like that, or whatever the case may be. Apparently, she's their star witness about how I'm a bra-burning feminist, and I'm constantly flooding my social media with LGBTQ propaganda and things like that. That's what she went to go and be testifying before the courts, that these are the things I talk about and everything. So for me, her own behavior was quite appalling, because this isn't who you claim to be. You said you were progressive. You said you were a feminist. So what are you doing in that witness box, number one? Saying all these things against causes that you claim to support. That's number one. Number two, here's a woman that has fled an abusive relationship. If there was ever a time for you as a feminist to take a stand, how dare you be the one here doing this to me? I have not given you one reason to treat me like this.
And just the overall betrayal of trust, having been friends with her as well.
This is the one that her own father, Paulinus' dad, was saying that I should not be joining her because we were like this, like we were close. People even used to say we looked alike, because we're the same height, we're the same skin tone. Like, I was so shocked by her behavior and I was very hurt. I'm not going to lie. I have no qualms in admitting that, no, this man, his family, and this girl hurt me. They hurt me. And that's why I can never forget. And I will not allow myself to forget.
That's honest and valid. Yeah.
I would have understood if after I escaped this relationship and this girl was just silent, like maybe when Paulinus' family, maybe when they are plotting or they are strategizing, which are the things that I know that they do, or they are casting aspersions or they are saying this, if she was just silent in the room and not saying anything, she's not supporting me, but she's just silent, I would have understood, because I know the position she's in. She's a scapegoat. But for her to be actively trying to destroy me like this, saying lies against me on record, going into a witness box to say these lies, haba. I can't justify it. I can't understand it. I don't know what to make of it. Honestly and truly, I don't. And I think this is just where I'll end it. Like, I'm never going to speak to these people because I have nothing to say to them. If they ever discover this podcast and they listen to this episode, this is the max that they're ever going to get from me in terms of addressing them and their behavior. Whatever they can glean from everything I've said there, that's what they should take as the last thing I've ever said to them. Because I have nothing to say.
Fair enough. So it's interesting that we spent this episode essentially like ticking off the members of Paulinus's family who were kind of active participants in your abuse, the whole abusive situation there with him, and then also very instrumental in enabling him. And for most of, this podcast, really from the beginning, we've spoken about Paulinus himself. We've described him. We've done a lot of exposition and deconstruction of, the dynamics of abuse that were at play, done a lot of deep diving and graphic narrating of, some of the situations and interactions and that played out between the both of you. But do you have anything to say in the same manner, in the same vein that you've spoken about the other members of his family on this episode? Do you have anything to say about him as well?
I do. I think for me, as we've been recording this, I often go back, I listen again over and over again to some of the episodes that we've recorded. And I know in my heart how much I loved this guy, how much I understood this guy, how much I just let him be him, even to the point where he was breaking me, to the point where he was harming me. I just kept on loving this guy because I felt I understood. I understood why he was lashing out, why he was behaving like this and that. Is everything I understood, even to the very deeply problematic things like the sexual things that I felt were violating not just me, but other people. In my head, I found some way, some corner in my brain to be able to still understand him. I didn't agree. I didn't like it. I despised it. I was irritated, but I understood him, which for me is where I think the disservice was for me, because all my life, all I ever wished for was to be understood. And it pains me that as much as I understood him, given everything problematic that he did, he could not find it somewhere within himself to do the same for me. He instead invested so much time in breaking me down, in trying to destroy me, in hurting me, in harming. It's like he took great pleasure in it. And just because of how much I loved him, I let him do it. I let him have it anyways. I laid down there as a sacrifice on the altar and I said, yes, kill me, finish me, because I understand you. I love you. And so I have a lot of empathy for people who are abused, other fellow warriors out there like me, because our only crime here is that we loved, and we loved someone so completely to the point where our love for them started to manifest as hatred for ourselves. A lot of us, like I know some people say, or some people have like low self-esteem, blah, blah, blah. A lot of us actually loved ourselves so much before we even encountered these people. I know for me, speaking for myself, I actually really loved and cared for myself. But because this guy became so all encompassing for me, it's like he consumed me to the point where I couldn't, my own self was even no longer in my own line of sight. It was just him. How can I make him happy? How can I help him feel better? How can I get him out of this mood? How can I make sure he doesn't do that? Like they consume your entire being. And so I know I loved this guy. That one is not even in question at all. I loved him. And it pains me that I now understand very clearly to myself that this guy just never actually loved me. He never loved me. He never understood me. He never even wanted to. I think that as well is just the other added layer that he never even wanted to. There was no effort on his end to even try. And so I do mourn that for myself, that I committed almost 10 years of my life pouring into something that was just never filling me back up. And that's why I became so depleted. That's why I just became so tired. The other angle is I look at my children and I love them so dearly. I love them so much. And for people who know us, my children actually look like him. They look like his side of the family. They don't look like me, but I love them so much. Even now, I look at their faces. They remind me of their dad, but I love them. Like, as much as I have pulled back my own energy from their dad, I cannot help but just keep pouring into my boys. I love them so much. And so, in a sense, somehow, it almost even feels a little weird. It's like, it feels like I'm loving that's that small Paulinus, the young Paulinus. That's what it feels like somehow. It feels like this radical act that I did of trying to save my boys. Sometimes it feels like almost this is what Paulinus himself needed then to be saved. But somehow he wasn't. Like, his dad was so problematic. His mom couldn't get the strength to leave the abuse, the further abuse when he got to school, all of that, everything that culminated together to break him and turn him into what he is. And I look at my children and it almost feels like this is me trying to afford to them what Paulinus himself never got. And so I know I've said this before when I say, honestly, I don't have any hate in my heart for this guy. I don't have hate towards him. And what I am working towards now is actually just indifference. I don't hate him, and I am trying to walk back the love that I had for him. I'm still in that journey of walking back that love and taking it all the way back, from him. But I don't hate him. I feel sorry. Because for someone to behave in this manner, for someone to be like this, there is deep hurt in that person. And I'm at the stage in my life where I actually understand that. I have been very angry. Till now, I'm still irritated. I'm still upset. But that sense of pity for him is really just what I have. And so for me, I think these are just the words that, if Paulinus himself were to be listening to this podcast, this is all I have to say about him, to him, whatever the case may be.
Wow, that was a lot. And I'm not going to add too much to what you've just said specifically about him, because I want your perspective to sit there. But I will just say this, that, it's the programming for women. We are taught that to love unconditionally, means that the recipient of that unconditional love, air quotes, that recipient has carte blanche, full rights to inflict unconditional suffering on you. And that is a shitty exchange. And so women, wake up, stand up. Love is not suffering. Love is not suffering. I think even just the bit that you've done in addressing this has shown a lot of strength, because it's taken a lot of vulnerability to address and confront, so to speak, the people who have hurt you, harmed you, and abused you. And you speaking your truth is so much part of the process of you taking your power back. And I'm very proud of you for standing in your truth, for speaking your truth, and damning the consequences on that. I just want to say that this is also, this dynamic of an abusive man's family sticking with him is a running theme in the collective. So is there anything that you have to say to other women who may be in that same position where it's like, I don't care about the man, but perhaps the family and their ways are keeping the woman there because she, is under the illusion that the love that she and the family shares, or, the fear of what the family might do in retribution along with their son, that might be keeping her stuck.
Mm-hmm. To any woman that finds herself in an abusive relationship, my advice to you is to leave. I would never recommend that you stay. You can't stay there because it only gets worse. The more you stay, the more you give room for the abuse to keep increasing. And like a frog that is being slowly boiled to its death, you wouldn't know when they actually kill you. Sometimes they actually kill you physically. They actually literally take your life. Other times it's a spiritual death. You become a shell, like you're no longer the person you are. They've literally scooped out your life's force, your essence, because in order to remain in something that is that toxic, you have to
separate yourself from yourself, and they succeed in that separation. And that separation is death.
Exactly. you are no longer a human being again. They would have turned you into something else. So my advice to a woman in an abusive relationship is always leave. But you see these abusive partners, you have to be strategic. When you leave, it has to be, not that you're leaving and then you're coming back to pick up anything. No, you must leave in haste. You must gather anything that is important to you. You must already have cleared it out of that place first. Like, you cannot leave any vulnerability on the table, so that when you actually leave, it is a clean cut. You've gotten out of there. You're not coming back for anything again. If, in fact, the love that, because like my sister said, there may be some goodwill that you have with his family. The way to test if that goodwill is real is after you leave, watch how they behave. Because there are some family members of these abusers that they know the person that they know their child.
And they have integrity.
Exactly. They have integrity. So the positioning that they take would be a place of deference, a place of, we are sorry. What can we do? I know you can no longer stay with the man, but maybe if there are children involved, how can we still be the grandparents to these children? How can we still forge forward in a way that all is not lost? They will take a completely different attitude. Sometimes, like, they would definitely lay into that abuser. They will have a completely different approach in how they handle you. But if you find that after you leave, these people turn around and they badmouth you, they are trying to destroy you, they're trying to take your children, they are incensed by your very leaving, then you know that everything that they were doing from the beginning was actually manipulation. It wasn't real love. They were trying to manipulate you into staying. They were trying to muddy the water. They were trying to blind your vision by the good deeds that they were doing to counteract all the bad that they know that you're enduring in that relationship. So, unfortunately, the only way to actually test the authenticity of the relationship you had with your abuser's family is to see their body language after you leave. The position that they take is what will let you know. And so again, I just want to be clear. If you are going to leave an abusive relationship, you have to be safe. You have to be smart and you have to be quick. There's no leaving over time. If you decide you're going to leave, you must leave in haste and you must leave quickly, because that's another thing. Once you decide that you're going to leave an abusive relationship, there's something about the aura you give up that your abuser knows.
That is the most dangerous time for any woman in an abusive relationship, when you make that decision.
Once you've decided, sometimes it just gets to the point where you're like, I can no longer stay here. Once you decide like that, it is better for you to leave literally.
Yeah.
In the next day or two, you must get out of there. In fact, if you can leave immediately, I would advise that you do. Because if you stay there thinking, you will use 1 month, let me gather my things, but you've already decided you're going to leave, there's just a way about your body language, because these abusers, they're very sensitive to abandonment. They're very sensitive to a change in attitude about you. And they would use any and everything, every kind of force to break you back into submission. And sometimes it gets to the point of death, because they hate to be abandoned. Or even worse, sometimes they try and discard you first.
To discard you. Yeah.
And
the wound of...
Exactly. Rather than once they can already sense the eyes, like this girl is about to leave, they'll try and leave the relationship first. But the way they will leave it to be such a messy way, it can actually break you in the process. Like what this Paulinus was trying to do when he was already running around telling his family that he's going to divorce me. All this is documentation, is paperwork. I'm convinced that this was all in the making. They were already trying to take my children from me, kick me out to the curb, probably go and put me somewhere in Yaba left, claiming that I have postpartum depression. Can you imagine if this guy's plan had actually succeeded? He would have just devastated me like that. Do you get what I mean? So when you're in an abusive relationship, it's very dangerous. But the moment you decide you're going to leave, that is the most dangerous time of all. You can lose your life. You can lose the things that are most important to you. They can physically kill you and they can spiritually kill you with their devastation. So you have to be careful. So I think that's a good way to end it there.
Okay, so this episode, I think, kind of brings a certain theme to an end, and that's getting family members' perspectives. So the next couple of episodes, we're going to get into some of your allies' perspectives. So perhaps a sister, a couple of friends, and then we're also going to, in the future, discuss red flags, the red flags of which you were aware of while you were entering into this relationship, the ones that are now more apparent in hindsight with a different kind of clarity and understanding, and just the dynamic of navigating red flags, bypassing them, the cost of it, and really just even noticing them in the first place. Because a lot of people at the start of a relationship have one of those rose-colored glasses where red flags just look like flags. So yeah, I think that'll be interesting to get into.
Yeah, and I can't wait. So guys, thank you again for rocking with the Authenticity Warrior. It's Bebe and
Toro signing out.
Yeah. Bye guys.
Bye.
My discernment about what I am facing has made me a target, but I must nonetheless speak up. Make no mistake, this is still a live and ongoing issue, and myself, my children, and loved ones continue to be in danger as a result of my coming forward with the truth. I want it on record that should any calamity befall any one of us, my abuser and his threatening family should be the first people held as persons of interest.
Authenticity Warrior is available everywhere you listen to podcasts and is at Authenticity Warrior across all social media platforms. Please feel free to like and share this podcast. Thanks for listening.